Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these videos every week where I recap what I've read in the last 7 days. And for those of you who have been on this journey with me for a while now, welcome back. Because this particular Books Beside My Bed video includes the end of April, I will have my stats at the end of this video for the last month. Well, the cumulative effect of my stats for the year. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, stick around to the end. I also want to let you know that the BookTube Creatives prompt for May has been released over on Meg's channel, Tome Infinity. I will leave a link on the screen to it so you can go and check it out if you would like to participate. She has tied it in with the Bookemon Badgeathon Readathon that she is hosting and I am co-hosting with her. So if you're interested, check it out. It is going to be really fun and I'm hopefully going to be filming my video for that next weekend. I just need a little bit of time to get myself set up in order to do it. I also know a lot of people like to know sort of what I've been watching in the last week, and the last week I really have been watching quite a bit. If you remember from last week's video, I talked about how I was watching Star Trek Discovery on Netflix, which I really loved. I actually finished watching it last week and then rewatched season 2 this week because I really enjoyed season 2. I was also rewatching the Star Trek rebooted alternate timeline films, the ones with Chris Pine, and I hadn't seen the third film, so I've actually gone and I've watched all 3 of those. Sorry about my phone in the background. I also started and finished season 1 of Roswell, New Mexico on Foxtel. Now I don't own Foxtel, I basically did the 10-day free trial of Foxtel Now and binge watched 15 episodes of Roswell, New Mexico, which I watched the Roswell show when I was in my teens and I adored it. And it was, you know, the first thing I'd ever seen Katherine Heigl in. Loved the show then. Love this new version, which is basically an adult version of the show. So they're all in their mid to late 20s and it's basically a CW show with 28-year-olds, which was just fabulous. And I'm looking forward to season 2 and hopefully it will come out on some other platform other than Foxtel so I can just purchase it and rewatch it whenever I want. The last thing I watched this week was Rogue One, which I actually watched on Saturday night, and I'll talk about why later on, but I've rewatched it and it's reminded me why it's one of my favorite Star Wars films outside of the original trilogy. Okay, now that I've rambled for so long not about books, let's jump into what I've read this week. This is my reading week from the 28th of April to the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. I read 6 books this week, 1 YA, 1 middle grade, and 4 adult books. I read 3 novels, 1 poetry collection, 1 non-fiction book, and 1 graphic novel. I read a total of 1,539 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 115 books. Book 116 that I'm currently reading is Obsidio. It is a reread for me. I am rereading and listening it to on audio. That is by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, for those of you who've been living under a rock. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm about 200 pages into that one and I'm hopefully going to finish it on Sunday when I'm filming this. The first book that I read this week was Defy the Fates by Claudia Gray. This is the 3rd and final book in the Constellation trilogy, which is a young adult science fiction series set in space. This is a 2019 release from Hotkey and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I've really enjoyed this series. This was not my favorite of the series. I'll be honest about that. There was just something that didn't feel quite like the rest of the series for me in this book, but it was still enjoyable. I did receive this from Allen & Unwin in exchange for an honest review, so here you're getting it. Probably a little bit difficult to talk about it being the 3rd book in a series, but it follows 2 characters, Noemi, who at the start of the series was a human living on a colony that has basically broken away from Earth, and they have shunned technology after the Earth basically went down that path and is basically destroying itself. So their colony is quite religious. They don't have a lot of technology, they don't believe in it, it's not part of their culture, but they are very determined to fight off Earth because now Genesis and Earth have this ongoing sort of feud. In the first book, she meets Abel, who is one of the most advanced mechs available, sort of like an android thing, but he actually can feel and he can think for himself. The 2 cross paths in the middle of a war and become unlikely allies, then friends, and their relationship progresses from there. This book felt like more of a YA contemporary romance with science fiction elements thrown into it than a science fiction book with romance elements thrown into it, if that makes any sense. Book 2 left off on a cliffhanger and basically that's where we start off, and I can't really say why, but what it does bring up is the question, what would you do if the person you loved was injured? And would you do something you know that they probably wouldn't choose for themselves in order to save their life? And the story sort of goes from there. And I really like that sort of discussion, and I like how both Noemi and Abel have to consider both sides of this problem from both their perspectives in relation to one another. And it was just one of those things that I just like thinking about. I don't know, I'm kind of weird like that. The first book that I read for the Bookemon Badgeathon was James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. I read this for the exemplary badge to read a classic book. So for the whole month you can collect badges, but you only count points from the 3rd until the 17th. So this one I didn't get points for, but I got a badge for it. This was originally published in 1961. This edition is by Puffin and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I actually had never read James and the Giant Peach. Don't ask. I only read a handful of Roald Dahl books when I was growing up. So this was nice to get through, very quick and easy, and not at all what I expected, because James is living with 2 very horrible aunts after the death of his parents. One day, an accident sees a giant peach growing on a tree in his aunt's garden. The aunts try and make money off this by, hosting tickets, and then one night James finds his way inside the giant peach, and there he meets all these insects and bugs that have been made large as well, and they go off on this adventure and end up in America. So it's very Roald Dahl, and I did enjoy it. So that was nice, fun, quick and easy, and a nice way to start the readathon. Then I read The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One by Amanda Lovelace. This is the second book in her poetry collection, the first one being The Princess Saves Herself in this one. This was published in 2018 by Andrews McMeel Publishing, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do really like Amanda Lovelace's poetry style. I like the sort of that format, but at the same time, this one felt just a lot more angry female in your face, which is not a bad thing at all. I'm not saying that, but I just probably wasn't right in the mood for that this time round. This one deals quite heavily with a lot of dark topics, abuse and rape and all sorts of things. So, you need to be aware of that going into it. Unlike the last poetry collection that I read a few weeks ago, which was not by Amanda Lovelace, it was by someone else, it didn't have the same hopeful feel at the end of it. It was very much girl power, you're strong, you are incredible, all that sort of stuff, and I truly appreciate that. But I don't know, it was really dark for me, and I just probably wasn't mentally prepared to deal with that at the time, which I should have been, because I know what her style of poetry is like. I'm actually really looking forward to her next one, which is something about a mermaid. I've forgotten the title off the top of my head, but I'm looking forward to reading that. For the Victorial badge to read a graphic novel or comic, I read Batgirl Volume 4 Wanted. This is part of the New 52. It was one of the collections that I never got around to reading, and it basically follows Barbara Gordon's dilemma in the aftermath of killing her brother in Volume 3, and how her father, Commissioner Gordon, is hunting down Batgirl. There's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on within it. I just love anything to do with Batgirl, and I will read anything to do with Batgirl. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was nice to jump back into New 52, and I've got absolutely no idea where the series is and where Batgirl is currently in the canon. I've got to catch up at some point. It's always just nice to dip back into it every now and then and just read something that I know I'm going to enjoy. Then I read The Art of Rogue One. Can I even fit it in the frame? I'll have to, shuffle it out of the side over here. And this was written up by Josh Cushkins. It was published by Abrams, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This is a coffee table book all about the art of Star Wars Rogue One, which is why I ended up watching Rogue One on the weekend. I'm going to put it down, it's heavy. I read this for the creative badge for the Bookemon Badgeathon, because this is to read an art book, and this is all the concept art and design work done around Rogue One, and you get a lot of information sort of about the history and the timeline and how things all came together, which was really nice. I just sat down and was just flicking through it and reading the sections and just looking at the artwork, and I really, really enjoyed it, and then it prompted me to go and watch the film again because I just love it. Finally, I read Mr. Right Now by Carly Lane. This is book 2 in the Callahans of Stringy Bark Creek series by Carly Lane. I read the first one last year and I absolutely loved it. This is a 2019 release. It should be coming out on the day of this video, in fact. It is published by Allen Unwin, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And fun fact, my review for the first book is blurbed on the back of this book. I've had this book in my apartment for 2 weeks and I had not looked at the back of this book because I don't read blurbs, and I especially don't read Carly Lane's blurbs because I know I'm going to enjoy them. I didn't see this until I finished reading the book. So that totally made my night when I finished reading it. I'm just so excited. That's never happened to me before. Oh my gosh, I feel like a real reviewer. So Mr. Right Now follows the second of the Callahan brothers, Griffin, who works on his family's farm. And in the first book, he was almost sort of the antagonist in the love triangle. In this book, he gets his own story, and we sort of unpack more why he was the way he was in the first book, without excusing it, but just sort of, unpacking who he is and why he behaved in a particular way. And we find out that in his teens, he was head over heels in love with Olivia Dawson, who was the girl next door and the sister of his best friend. And they dated through high school, and then when he went off to university, they broke up. And Olivia has gone off and now lives in Sydney and is a corporate lawyer. But when an accident on her family's farm brings her back home, the two sort of have to reconcile and learn how to be around one another again, and then romance blossoms and it's just awesome. But there's always complications, and Olivia is not sure she wants to move back to the farm. She's got her life in the city, she's got everything that she wants, and yet she's not happy. So this is really a lot about the push and pull of their relationship dynamics. It's about Olivia sorting herself out and figuring out what she wants for herself, which I really appreciate. Of all the Carly Lane books that I've read, and I've probably read 5 or 6 now, she's the one I relate to the most, because she's trying to figure herself out, and she wants to find a place. She wants a relationship, but she also doesn't want to have to sacrifice everything she's worked for to get there. And hello, I can relate. I really enjoyed this. It was wonderful. I can't wait for book 3, which is going to be the last book in the series and is going to follow, I believe, Hadley, who is Griffin's younger sister. And we also found out sort of the beginnings of Hadley's story in this book, because something happens in Hadley's own marriage that causes some issues, and I'm so excited. I love this series, and I really, really hope book 3 is out later this year, because I just want to read it right now. So those are the books that I read this week. Okay, so let's talk some stats, and this month I'm a little bit more organized because I even have some numbers of things, sort of. Okay, so in the month of April, I read 31 books. I read 16 adult books, 10 YA, 4 middle grade books, 0, well, I say 0 kids books, but I didn't actually count kids books in my wrap-ups, I don't think. So I have read them. I've been reading them at school. And because I added this at the last minute, I also read 2 new adult books. For my fancy charts that I have in the spreadsheet that I use, I have increased my female to male author ratio. I think I've also increased it in my protagonist gender as well, although a lot of the books that I read have dual perspective, male, female, so it's probably almost even on that count. I've actually read more adult books this year, and that makes me really happy because it means I am probably reading a lot more well-rounded in terms of readership age group. Science fiction is still the biggest genre that I've read this year, and I'm hoping that will continue because that is my baby genre. I still predominantly read trade paperbacks, although I am reading a lot more audio and digital books this year. Still predominantly reading novel length books. This month, I think, going off memory, because I forgot to bring in last month's stats with me to look at it, I actually think that my page count graph has changed slightly. I think I've read slightly more books in the 200 to 299 page range, whereas I think for the rest of the year, the 300 to 399 has been the highest level. I think I've just tipped over into the slightly shorter length books. The majority of the books that I have read are 2018 releases, which is not surprising because a lot of the books that I read come from me revisiting what I've purchased in the last 12 months. I didn't get to a lot of my 2018 releases last year, so that makes a lot of sense. And those are my reading stats for April. Now we're into May. Where is this year going? I have no idea. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of the books that I have read this week, or if you are planning on reading some of them in the future. Alternatively, let me know what you have been reading in the last 7 days. I would love to hear about it. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.